I could have just as easily posted on the WhatsApp group, but then I thought about it. We've got a couple new members this year, and they really should know what they get into. So why not present them early with the idea of their commissioner instead of typing his answers out, finding a longer, more rambly and elaborate way to kind of get the answers across. Plus, then I get to go over some of the stuff I said I was going to go over, so hopefully I'm not making another one of these videos until about 6 weeks when we draft, but who knows? I do have to say, I think giving a shout to what this league has started as and what we're going towards, we've always been fairly open-minded. We did just kind of slip there and turn a little bit mega, but can you blame people here? You let your borders down, you let a few people in, suddenly they're not respecting our culture, they're making their own rules. You let one person in, they bring their whole family flooding in with all their different ideas. Next thing you know, you get a pretty straight edge guy like Paul that starts being influenced by these ideas. Now he's identifying as another man, and I don't actually know what term that flies for, androsexual or heteroflexible or gray sexual. I don't know. Actually, if you know some of those terms, they are real terms, by the way, then you're probably in education. I shouldn't be too surprised, though, just because we do have some people here in education or in the medical field or life coaching or in business and banking, but the predominant part of our group here is kind of UN and NGO. So I suppose it's not super surprising that people want to team up. I mean, most leagues I've ever run, people fight for their own team so they can make their own decisions. But again, we're kind of a UN group here. So, when presented with a new challenge that involves a lot of work and discipline, you can go one route and do a lot of research and find out more. Or you can outsource it and find one person who's maybe marginally more knowledgeable than you and then just sit back and wait for your promotion. Jokes aside, this is actually a pretty communal league and a pretty friendly league, so I figure I might as well give an idea of what's coming up for these new people by just giving a little brief kind of snapshot of how we got here. A league that's only in its second year isn't going to have a storied history, so realistically, it's just more what gave us our success last year and what made us come up with the league in the first place. If I had to say, 40% of the credit goes to Kelsey, and that's our Kelsey, not Tay-Tay's Kelsey, and the Netflix series Quarterback that kind of spurred on this conversation. You get the majority of the credit. However, I would say another maybe 30% goes to Kelsey, but this time actually, Taylor's Karma's guy on the Chief, Kelsey. The storylines that kind of drew people in and got people motivated were pretty good. You can only give maybe 1% to actual NFL football. We did watch a couple of them together, so I'll mention it, but it's a small percentage point. You only get a percentage if you round up, because the rest of it, which would be about 30%, because the NFL part is negligible, is the communal factor, is the fact that we find excuses to get together as much as we can. We're probably one of the only people or groups of people that watch Super Bowl from its completion there, including commercials, on delay. And I think that gives us something. We met up for a Super Bowl game, or sorry, not just the Super Bowl, but a Thanksgiving game, and obviously a Sunday game that was happening a little bit earlier when it was in England. So that's something I feel new people should get into. So again, before you agree to be in this league, maybe you should understand some of the social aspects and the consequences. First, dealing with a question that I was actually asked on the chat group. Yes, this is actually a pay league. It is minimal, though. It's not a whole lot in terms of the league fees. It's 25 Czech francs per team. And before we get going, when I announce the draft order and all that, I'll confirm what that's going to mean for prize points. But just to give people an idea, if they're new, typically if you've won the regular season, you get probably 30, so a little bit more than your money back. Same for third place after the playoffs. And then I'll probably split the rest between first and second in the playoffs, 75 and 115, something along those lines. But I will make that confirmed. So there is a little bit of a financial both incentive, but also a cost to being into it. But the big things that actually fuel our league and make it, I think, as fun as it was last year is our consequence-based drink rule that's week by week. So just a quick snapshot on this one. The worst team out of the 10 in this case owes a round of drinks. Now, that doesn't necessarily do much for the partners who are overseas, because obviously myself included, not something we're going to come all the way back for just to enjoy a beverage, but we are on the hook for it. So I would say that's something you need to sort out with your group and your partnership to make sure that's kind of sorted. Now, it is a 2-drink maximum. If I was the 10th in weeks 1 and weeks 2, in weeks 3, if I'm last again, it goes to whoever was just above me. I'm now exempt, but I can keep going and obviously keep playing. That did come into factor last year, but with an 8-person league, it came into a factor a lot. With 10 people, it should be a little bit better. The other kind of consequence that we have to figure out is the last place consequence. Okay, the tub thumping that Jackie did was pretty exceptional. And this is one that every team member will have to do. If your team finishes 10th, you owe a whiskey drink, a vodka drink, a lager drink, and a cider drink. And you have two options. Either we did for the Super Bowl for the first quarter, but you could have full, nice vodka drink, but full, volume. Same with whiskey. Full pints of cider and lager, or you can do what Jackie did, a shot of each, just straight, and she knocked it out before the chorus, but you technically would have the entire song of tub thumping to do. So something to think about, because even if you're overseas, if I am dead last, you're getting a video either live when you're watching me, or just a video of me doing it all, and so just bear that in mind. I would say too, just to clarify, since we are getting down to some of the brass taxes and rules in this one, do remember for the buying of the rounds, we did it super friendly last year. People were buying whole nights worth of drinks or way more. Technically, and this is another one for teams, you got to think about this. Technically, you only owe one drink per team. So if I showed up and there's 10 teams, I technically only owe 10 drinks. Now, if people were going above and beyond and buying food, which goes to the nature of how accepting and awesome everyone is in the league. But if people want to get technical, that is something that does apply. Although I would say if your team does that, then other teams will probably do it to you. So let's not start to be negative. But technically, we're not trying to break the bank here. It's really just excuses to get together. So now that you know kind of the consequences, in terms of a commissioner's ruling, it's not like I ever rule with an iron fist. Typically, we do a lot by voting, but just to give my 2 cents on this about how I think we should move forward. Now, technically, Jax and Anissa are right. We did say a max of 2 owners per team, just because if we start loading it up, then it gets a little bit convoluted. Plus, we do want more teams. So more teams tends to be a little bit more fun. In this particular case, and I'm not taking a shot at Paul and just saying that, he didn't really manage his team so much last year. It was super impressive, and it's not a shot on him. But for those who weren't in the league last year, not only was that not an ad drop, he barely even moved teams on and off, or players on and off the bench. So I think having 10 active people is really important. So if people want to do that the way that we've set it up and have these partnerships, I think that's fine. Just remember in the future, if you're thinking about bringing someone else into the league, just mention it to people, because there are a few people in the league that wouldn't mind a partner. And so instead of adding to one team, maybe just make it a bit more open and let people know how we're going to do it. But we can probably still go ahead. Unless other people have bigger objections, we can really raise them. I don't know how serious people are. Sometimes on chats, it's tough to dictate tone. Anywho, that's the excuse for making this emergency video. But now that I have you, I do want to talk about some of the rule changes. Ruling aside, I wanted to go over a couple things while I have your attention. And if I'm going to make this video, I might do a pre-one or some draft one, stuff like that. But this is the last one for a little while, at least till we get going. So I might as well throw this out there. We talked about a few of these things at the barbecue that last Sunday, for those who could make it. But a bunch of people didn't, and new people should probably know some of this stuff. First is the draft day. We were in no rush to actually draft, because obviously, if you see here, it's not until the 5th of September. So we've got tons of time, month and a half, easy. But you want to do it on the weekends, probably before. Last year, we did it on like a Monday or Tuesday night at like 7:30 because people put their kids down. That was fine because everyone was in Geneva except for a few people who are overseas getting phone calls. I don't know if that works out so well this year. I think kids, maybe it's a little bit later, but also maybe hypothetically in a couple days, I'm going to Thailand and I'm 5 hours ahead. So I can do it, but it would be less than ideal. The idea came up on the weekend about, again, maybe it was a Sunday thing and people had Sunday on the brain, but trying to do like a Sunday barbecue where those who could make it in Geneva made it over. We still draft online. We're not drafting live, so everyone have to have their own computer. It's on Yahoo, so Paul can tell you what happens if you can't make the draft day or time. Yahoo does it for you. You can prepare your lists, all that stuff. That's still the same. But just remember, if you did an afternoon one, that would be quite nice for, let's say, me a little bit in the future, or as my time zone's ahead, and nice to the partners and group members who are back in North America as they're a bit behind. So like a midday one wouldn't be too bad. But the key is childcare on this one. Normally I would just throw out a few polls and people would vote, but I think the parents should probably speak up. Is it possible to try and get maybe some of our cheerleaders and or babysitter people that can come in and try and help for just 2 hours of childcare / nap time or something like that? Or is that out of question? So you all talk to parent people, kind of throw in your 2 cents, what time of day is better, and then we'll see if we can lock down a day. Okay, but I will throw a poll when I can. What I did want to talk to us about, this is our current league page, so that means we still have 2 slots because there's 2 teams that are meant to sign up at some point sooner than later. Hopefully sooner, because then I can set all the league details. Remember, the only thing that I'm not really voting on here, we are going to be doing the playoffs. Bottom 4 will play off to see who gets tub thumped and who can avoid that. Top 6 will go to our playoffs this year, which means the 1 and 2 in the regular season will get a bye. It works out that way. You go straight to the semifinals. 3 play 6, 4 play 5s. We're fine. Okay, so I'll set that up, but you have to sign up first. The rule I want to sell you on, and I think should not be too difficult to explain. Now, for those who have been in pools before, it's called a Superflex league or Superflex rule, which they tried to make it as nerdy as possible about something that is already nerdy. But just bear with me. 1 minute. Should be able to explain it. This is our champion from last year's team. I just wanted to remind people about positionings because, as I said, Kelsey in the quarterback series inspired this league. We went 2 quarterbacks, plus we only had 8 teams, so that was very manageable. 2 wide receivers, 2 running backs, tight end, and a flex. Remember, the flex here is the wide receiver, running back, or tight end. You could pick based on the week. We also have kicker and defense, but they're not. We're not touching them yet. The reason I want to mention this, so a super flex is similar. The one thing I'm thinking is with 10 teams, we saw last year that NFL quarterbacks, now granted, last year was an exception. There was more starting quarterbacks than any other season. There was a lot more injuries and just crap quarterbacks who need to be replaced. So what I was thinking, since there's only 32 teams, essentially teams would want 2 to 3 quarterbacks. That means most of them are taken, and now we're fighting over people who are garbage for bye weeks. And actually during bye weeks, during a couple weeks, there would barely be enough to get by, even if you're talking about decent quarterbacks. And the whole point of fantasy sports is that it's actually fun, so you want people you're excited about. So I like the idea of the 2 quarterback system, but let me introduce the Superflex idea. This is another league I'm in. This is a team that did quite well, and this is a Superflex league. So you notice the difference. There's only 1 quarterback. Well, they have 3 other receivers, but we wouldn't do that. We'd do the 2 running backs, tight end. You have a flex, and then here's what I'm talking about with Superflex. What that is it's another position where you can take the running back, wide receiver, tight end, or you can put a quarterback in. Because I like to help out with people. This is not something that I just think, but people write online a lot. Traditionally, I mean, even here, your top scorer might not be your quarterback, but they tend to be more consistent in points. So there's an advantage to having 2 quarterbacks. So we keep our quarterback strong nature of our draft. But if you get a bad injury, or if it's a week where you have bye week issues, so you've lost a quarterback or maybe even 2, some people started off by paying attention to that, but then you had injuries come in and it was an issue. So if there was a week where you really didn't have 2 quarterbacks that you were excited to start, strategically, you could look at any other position player and kind of bring them in. And while that I don't expect that to happen a whole lot, I like the idea of at least giving the option for people to think about it and come up with their own ideas and their own strategies. So you can still be very quarterback strong. I still think it's a huge advantage to have 2 starting quarterbacks on a weekly basis. But if something happens, your world is not over, and it allows for more accountability or for more flexibility, especially with the league that's a bit bigger. So I would heavily push for it. If anyone wants to speak against it, you can put it in the comments and we can have a conversation. But if left to me to decide, I would decide that that's what we're doing. So that's it. Hopefully that wasn't too long for people. I mean, if you've been in this league, you know I tend to go way longer. I do still intend on doing some of these videos. We'll see what happens when I actually make it to Thailand and figure out my schedule. But hopefully people are getting excited, and I think by the WhatsApp group, it seems like people are. Year 2 is a big one. So for people who are new to the league, welcome. Get ready for a fun time. Not super serious about football, but we like to take ourselves seriously by insulting others. It actually really helps me as someone who's now taught in the high school for so long, but it's going to be moving down to grade 8. It's good to know people that their first instinct is to drag everyone else down with them. So this is actually really going to help my transition. So thank you for that. I appreciate the trash talking. For those who are returning, I think last year was pretty much everyone's first run, except for maybe a few people who are tagging in at fantasy football. Remember, year 2 is very different. Technically, it's not a keeper. We are keeping no people from the year before. But that doesn't mean your reputation isn't going to precede you. You know, everyone's going to want to beat the defending champions. How people drafted, people might change. You might assume the same kind of ideas and same strategies. Your name, some people are going to keep your same name. Maybe you want to change your same name. Technically, I don't know if people know this. You can change your name as often as you want throughout the season. Technically, I have been in leagues with people who change it week by week, which is really frustrating and annoying, but they seem to like it. So if you want to change anything about yourself, I think that's fine. All we need to do is get people signed up. So we have the 10. I can lock everything in. You can take a look whenever it pleases you. But remember, we are in no rush, folks. It is July 17th as I am recording this and hopefully giving it out to you. We have 6 weeks until the draft and even longer until the kickoff, but it's exciting. We're getting talking about it. I'm getting excited just thinking about it. So hopefully this helps. I'll see you on draft day.